Hello everyone, I just want to do a video and update my reading for the month of May. So in this video I'm going to go over the things I read last month, what I'm currently reading, and what I plan to read in the next month. So let's begin with what I have read in the last month in April. The last book I finished was The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. This is obviously an American classic book written in the 30s about the Dust Bowl and a family who has to move to California. I haven't made a review of this video. I'm not sure. A review of this book, rather. I'm not sure if I will or not. But I'm not going to go into too much detail about the book itself. I'm not really sure how I feel about it anyways. I enjoyed it to a point. I wouldn't say I loved it. It took me a while to read, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, I don't know. It wasn't hard to read. It was actually pretty decent, or kind of fun to read. But it wasn't exactly a page turner for me, so it kind of took a while. And by the end, I was ready to be done with it. But it was a good book, a nice journey, interesting characters, lots of themes and symbolism, and lots of messages within the subtext of the story. Some of those I don't agree with, but I enjoyed the book enough for what it was. I also read The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury. I did review that book on my channel here. You don't have to look at it if you don't want to. It's not a very good video. But that was a good book as well. It's a collection of short stories written in the 40s and 50s about humans colonizing Mars. It's by Ray Bradbury, so he has a very poetic way of writing, so that continues here in this book as well. I really enjoyed that one. My favorite of the collection was a story called Usher 2, which paid homage to works by Edgar Allan Poe. I also read Life of Pi for the first time. The movie has always been one of my favorite movies ever since I first saw it. So I finally decided to read the book, and it delivered as well. I really enjoyed it. I made a review of that as well. It's not a book with lots of symbolism and lots of internal meaning. But yeah, that was a good book. I would recommend that one if you're at all interested in it. And then the only other actual novel that I read this month was The Eyes of the Dragon by Stephen King. This was his children's fantasy fairy tale book, written in the 80s, I believe, about a kingdom and a prince and some other stuff. I didn't review that book either. I keep calling them videos. I don't know why. I probably won't review that one. But I did enjoy it. It was a different writing style than most of King's work, which I did not really, what do I want to say here, vibe with. Yeah, that's the trendy thing, right? I didn't vibe with his writing style all that much. It was pretty simple. But I thought the story was pretty good. It's had some unique characters. I think it got really interesting around the halfway point. And then the ending was pretty solid too. I'm really looking forward to see if the events in this story are referenced in the Dark Tower series anywhere or anywhere else in his work. I think that would be interesting. So then I read a couple of, I guess you'd call them novellas or short stories. The first one was The Willows by Algernon Blackwood. This was a horror story written, I don't know when it was, sometime in the 1920s maybe. It was pretty good. It was a very atmospheric, creepy little story about a couple of people who are traveling down a river and get caught in a sort of a unknown location. So yeah, that was a pretty good story. If you haven't heard of Algernon Blackwood before, he's a really solid writer of horror, very similar to Edgar Allan Poe or H.P. Lovecraft. I've read 2 of his stories so far, and I've really enjoyed them both. So I like to read more of his work, and I would recommend checking him out. I also read Turn of the Screw by Henry James. This was another short novel or novella, whatever you want to call it. This one I didn't really care for. The writing was very hard to get through. It was very thick. There's a lot of dialogue. A lot of it was really melodramatic, of people yelling at each other and whatever. The characters were kind of weird. The story was okay, I guess. It was not my favorite. In fact, it's probably my least favorite story I've read so far this year. I did read a few comics. I read The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller. This is a pretty well-known story. One of the classic Batman runs by Miller in the 80s. It takes place, when Batman's in his 50s and had retired as the Caped Crusader, but then he comes back, and hence the title, The Dark Knight Returns. Yeah, that's a pretty good story. I wouldn't say I loved it. I didn't really care for the art style. It was overly long. It was 200 pages for the entire run. I had a hard time getting through all of it. It was kind of loaded. It had some scatterbrain parts, with floating around viewpoints from other people, I wouldn't say characters, just some talking heads and things like that I guess they had a point, but they got a little excessive, in my opinion. I also didn't like Robin in the story. So this is a completely different take on Robin than really any other story, I believe. I didn't really care for it. Yeah, that's all I'll say about that. But other than that, it was a pretty good story. I thought the animated movie, was better. I thought it did the graphic novel justice, and I think it improved a lot in terms of the art and some of the more action-packed moments. I also read a couple of the New 52 Detective comic runs. I read volumes 1 and 2 by Tony Daniel. I thought those were pretty good. I enjoyed reading those. The story wasn't that great. They really didn't amount to much. Kind of generic stuff. But they did set up some arcs for villains. Quite a few villains, actually. I don't know if they paid any of them off. I haven't finished the run yet. But it had some cool Batman moments. And the art was just amazing. This is my favorite art of any Batman comic that I've read so far, which admittedly is not a lot. So that's all that I read in April. So what am I currently reading? Currently I'm trying to get through Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire on my Potter reread. I started this in March, technically. I haven't really read a lot because I am taking the Potter books as more of a palate cleanser of sorts in between books, and when I'm tired of other ones. So it's pretty slow going on these, which is kind of funny because the first time I read Goblet of Fire in middle school, I devoured it in like 3 days, and now it's been over a month. So that's ironic, I guess, or not. I'm also reading At the Mountains of Madness by H.P. Lovecraft, which is my first, technically maybe not my first. I did read a collection of work that takes place, in Lovecraft's universe. So it's a bunch of short stories based on like Cthulhu mythos and things like that. And one of those stories was, I believe, a discarded draft from one of Lovecraft's stories. So technically, I have read it before, I think. But this is my first real story, my first real foray into his work. I wouldn't say I'm loving it so far. The ideas are pretty cool. There's some pretty freaky stuff going on, obviously. This one is about a trip into Antarctica or Alaska, or no, not Alaska. It was Antarctica, right? Or the North Pole. somewhere cold and icy. I don't know. He probably told us like 20 times during the book. But there's some weird stuff going on. They find some weird stuff. Unfortunately, it's not enough. They really only touched on that a few times. At least so far, I'm only around halfway through it. It's a pretty short read, but it's kind of hard to get through. Unlike Algernon Blackwood, Lovecraft is a little thicker to read, at least in this book so far. And this one in particular is very long-winded. It talks in circles a lot. It's focusing on a lot of stuff that I don't really care about. I like to focus more on the actual story and some getting into some weirder stuff rather than describing the scenery for the entire book. But yeah, I'm only around halfway through that, so this opinion might change afterwards. But yeah, that's all that I'm reading currently. I'm trying to wrap at least one of those up before I start something new. And so what will I be reading in the next month? Well, the next one I will be reading is the next adventure in the Dark Tower series. Wizard and Glass, book number 4. So I'll be reading that as soon as I get finished with one of the two, or maybe both of the ones I'm currently reading. It's quite a long book, so it might take me a week or two. And depending on how much I like this one, I may fast track the rest of the series so I can get those out a little quicker. But we'll see how I react to this one. Additionally, I'm not sure if I want to read The Wind Through the Keyhole next after Wizard and Glass, or wait until after book 7 to read that one. I'm not sure yet. If you have any thoughts on that, feel free to let me know. Then I will be reading the rest of the Harry Potter series. I would like to prioritize those as well, just to get those out of the way. They're very good books, but when you read a series over several months, it starts to lose its luster a little bit, which is what I'm doing with Dark Tower, so that doesn't really make any sense. But then after Dark Tower and after Potter, I want to read Dracula by Bram Stoker. In case you didn't know, this is about a vampire named Dracula. The book is a few years old. I actually started reading it in junior high, but I didn't really get into it, so I put it back. But that was a common theme for me in junior high, so I'm hoping to give it another chance, and I'm sure that I'll like it this time. I will also be reading Project Hail Mary very soon by Andy Weir. This is one of those books that I've been wanting to read for a while now. I read The Martian years ago and I enjoyed it. And then when I heard about this new one that had come out, and everyone had really high opinions of it, I immediately put it on my to be read list. And then I decided to buy it as a birthday present about a week or so ago. So I'm looking forward to reading that sometime in the next month. I'm also looking forward to reading Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke. This is one that I bought a few months ago. Again, I've heard really good things about this one. And one of the books that I did enjoy in junior high was 2001: A Space Odyssey by Arthur C. Clarke. So I'm quite positive that I'll enjoy this one as well. And it's a rather short read, so I don't believe it'll take me too long to get through. And I am tempted to start reading The Lord of the Rings. I've read The Hobbit before in a couple different classes, but it's been a few years. And I tried reading Fellowship in middle school, but I didn't get into it. So I'd like to give that series another chance. I'm not sure if I want to start that now. I don't know if I have enough room in my head for 2 fantasy series at one time, so I might try to finish Dark Tower first. Or maybe I'll just start with The Hobbit, since I basically know what that one's about already. Well, frankly, I know what they're all about. I've seen the movies. I'm also looking forward to trying some either British lit or Russian lit. Now that I've gotten my footing with classic American literature a little bit, I like to branch out and do some more British and Russian stuff. So I'm going to start with some shorter stories, by Dickens and Tolstoy. and maybe some others. And so some of the ones I'm looking at are A Christmas Carol, Oliver Twist, and then either The Idiot or The Gambler by Dostoevsky. I don't remember which one, but I know one of those is pretty short. I believe there's Notes from the Underground as well, which is also short. I may look into that one too. So I might be reading one of those books within the next month when I get a chance. So I seem to have a lot of books on my TBR list that I have on for this month. So I doubt I'll be able to get to all of those, but those are the ones I'm looking at for my next round of books. So we'll see how that goes. I don't have any comics currently on my list. If I take a trip to the library again, I'll probably look at some comics and pick one up if I see one that I want to read. Again, that would mostly be Batman, or maybe some Watchmen, or there was a couple runs of Superman and Daredevil I'd like to give a read. But yeah, it's mostly Batman at this point. I think that's all I have though. So that's a wrap. So anyways, thanks for watching, and this is important, don't forget this.